Right, I think we'll make a start. Welcome everybody to the Tileyard Connected that we're hosting today at the Gallery event space at Tileyard, London. We've got a few people sitting down here with more to come in the next few minutes, and we've got quite a few people online as well. So to welcome our guests, we've got Jamie from Rhodes and we've got Danny from Novation. So give them a big round of applause for taking time out. So this is the first Tileyard Connected that we're doing in person, because obviously over the past 2 years we haven't been able to do that. So it's a real honor to have you guys here in person and the guest speakers here. So the breakdown of today is, it's called How We Make It. What we really want to find out on this panel talk is about the music equipment that you make. So Novation as a brand, and then of course this new Rhodes piano that's being made. Many of us here are musicians and producers. We buy the products and we use them. But actually we've got no idea about the thought process that goes behind the product. Why you make it? Is there a market? What goes into it? Is it made just by you? Do you have a team of 2 people, 10 people, 50 people? Do you work with artists? So we're going to pick your brains a little bit about that. We will be welcoming questions from the floor as well. So if there's any geeky, techie stuff that you need to know. I know Tom over there, he likes a Rhodes piano and he's a big fan of the Novation bass station too. In fact, he's been borrowing mine for the past 7 years probably, and he's just brought it back, so thanks Tom for returning it. It's been around the world on a world tour, so there you go. Danny, if we could start with you, just intro yourself, who you work for and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so I'm Danny, I work for Novation. I am a hardware product designer and I mostly focus on UI and UX, which are user interfaces and user experience. And day to day, it's a lot of different things. It can be everything from user research to writing technical specifications to all of just making bleepy noises on snaps.
That's what we all like, right? That's the most important part. Tell us about the team that you work with. What members, how many are there, and what are their roles?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm actually not sure how many people we got. So many people joined during COVID times that I haven't really met everyone face to face yet. But yeah, we're probably about, I couldn't say maybe 20 engineers, and then we've also got marketing department, sales department. So overall, as a company, we're probably like 140 strong, but the people who are developing the products is quite small. And yeah, what we're made up of is normally like for each product, there's a team behind it, and we'll have like an electronics engineer, a designer, someone who looks after the mechanical design, so the 3D and how the whole thing fits together, testers, trying to think if I've missed anyone else, and oh yeah, product people, so I can kind of help decide what it is.
Great, thank you. And then we've got Jamie, who's been with Rhodes actually for a very, very long time. So tell us about really how you first got to know of Rhodes back in the day, and then your involvement in the early 2000s, was it?
Yeah, like many people, I got my hands on my first Rhodes when I was in my 20s, and I found a Mark I suitcase in my aunt's basement in Las Vegas. And I had a couple of friends that were doing a cross-country trip, and when I found out about this, I told them to go there and put it in their truck and bring it back to me, which they did. And so then, that launched my knowledge of the Rhodes and how incredible of an instrument it is. But of course, I didn't know any of the intricacies of a Rhodes and how it works. But I recorded with it anyway. And then in 2005, Rhodes came back into business after going out of business in 1984. And I just happened to be living in Long Beach, California at the time. And I befriended the CEO of the new rendition of Rhodes, and he brought me on as basically, frontline line worker, learning how to build, voice, and tune a Rhodes. And so during that process, I built about 325 Rhodes pianos and learned everything about it from the grommet to the screw, all the way up to what it is today.
And tell us about your current role at Rhodes, because there's a brand new Rhodes here, which you all can come up later and have a little play on.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in this incarnation?
Serendipitously, I wound up, so the Rhodes Mark 7, which is the team that I was on in Los Angeles, lasted till about 2011. Basically, to put it bluntly, making an electric piano in this day and age is not easy. And so we were a little bit over our head. We had no idea the demand was going to be that huge. And so our demand got to here and our supply was about here, and it became difficult to keep the business alive. And so we had to close our doors. And I was heartbroken about it. Life went on, and I managed to move to London about 3.5 years ago. Well, during that time, a lot of things happened, a lot of talk, we have the trademark, and a couple of guys here in the UK became involved with the trademark and hired our creator, Dan Goldman, who's up in Leeds, to take on the project. And Dan had been in contact with me for about 10 years. And he opened up the factory in Leeds, UK, and called me up and said, "Hey, Jamie, remember me?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "We're back and we need you." And I was like, "Okay, I live in London." He goes, "Yeah, we need a man in London and to handle the artist relations." And so now I don't have to build the piano every day. I get to show the piano every day. So it's been great.
That's a good story. Some people here, I think, Tom, you might know Dan Goldman. He used to be the keyboard player for More Chiba. And Dan and I go way, way back. So when he hinted quite a few months ago, he said, "I've got something very cool coming up, but I can't tell you." And then, of course, he told me straight away that, yeah, he's the man heading up the project. And Dan was very involved in the restoration of Rhodes pianos for many, he's a player himself, but he restored them. Yeah. So if there's anyone for the job, he's the guy who knows how to build it.
Yeah, I would say he's the Rhodes guru of the UK. And again, he was contacting me frequently a decade ago, and I was a fan before I was ever a friend. I knew who he was from a musician standpoint. I never imagined that we would get to this point today. And I also was just so impressed when I look back at those messages. He actually had this all thought out about 9 years ago, and now we've built the Rhodes of our dreams.
Is that how your brain works, Danny? Do you have these product ideas in your head that were like, "We need to make this," and then the big owners say, "No, what a silly idea," and then you convince them back and forth? How does it work from basic product idea? Because I know with Novation and many companies, the engineers always have ideas, but there needs to be a commercial value to the product as well. It's like, we could make this and we'll sell 50. We need to make things that are going to sell 50,000. What's the process of working with the sales and the commercial team to decide if a product's going to be viable or not?
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of research. We kind of take a look and see what musicians are using and what they're into, and obviously there's like certain trends that go throughout the industry. One of the most recent ones is people going doorless, trying to move away from the computer, and see how we can fit into that. That's one element, is trying to figure out kind of what do people need, which is quite a big question to answer. The other way is we make something cool and kind of show it around. It's like, yeah, do you think this is cool? I think like a recent one of that is our Peak and Summit synthesizer. So we work with, we did work with Chris Huggett, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. But he was like one of the biggest synth designers in the UK, like a real genius. And he came up with this idea of like using this FPGA chip technology to drive these oscillators. And he's like, "Do you think we can make something of this?" And it sounded incredible. And we're just like, yeah, I think this could be a product. Yeah. So yeah, it really depends what we're trying to kind of achieve as well.
How do you work, Danny, with artists? Do you kind of come up with an idea and a prototype and give it to them to get their ideas, or is it something where you're pretty much 95% of the way, then you give it to them just for the final little tweaks at the end?
Yeah, so working with artists is an interesting one, because artists always have that kind of unique way of working, and you're trying to work out, is that just their special way of making music? So we try to work with artists, but also like everyday users as well. So we do a lot of recruitment of just trying to find anyone who's making music and trying to talk to them as much as possible. And we do that before like the product concepts, like it's maybe even a drawing on a piece of paper. And then we do a lot of prototyping, so try and make this thing as physical as possible, so we can kind of see people interact with it and see if it is a good product. So, for example, one of our products is this proof box called Circuit. And it's this little tiny box, it's got 2 cents and a drum machine in there, and you can sequence it. That started off as like a max patch hooked up to a launch pad. So we kind of faked everything, and people could interact with this device, this sequencer, and play about with it. And we just observed people using it. And it's like, people tend to get on, they can make something musical pretty quickly. And that's what we wanted to achieve there. It's like, just get some idea out. So yeah, a lot of observation of users, that's how we want to do it. But revised is always like, yeah, take it with a pinch of salt.
Is it similar for you, Jamie, at Rhodes? I mean, it's got a long history of the Rhodes piano. So with the new Mark 8, there's certainly an aspect of you need to stay true to the original to keep the original fans happier. But with the advance of technology, tooling, materials, you can create something that's possibly vastly superior. So was it very much speaking to the original owners, or was it you, Dan, and the team going, we're just going to make the ultimate thing that we want and other people will like it?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head in the sense that Rhodes artists all over the world know what they want, and they they've played on a vintage Rhodes, and they want that sound. But if you look on stage or on YouTube or whatever, you see a lot of artists hooking up different pedals, doing different things with it, because it's essentially kind of like an electric guitar, but it's an electric piano. And so you can run it through all kinds of effects. But there are very popular effects. And so those effects in the past have been the phaser or the wah or delay. And so just as you said, Dan as a Rhodes player, myself as a Rhodes player, and everyone that we've spoken to in the past and the present, wanted a Rhodes that can do it all essentially. And we realized that that doesn't, that staying true to analog is actually what's most important. Even though I think at one point, we have to get more digital, we do this and that. No, you don't. There's hundreds of plugins out there. But the market is looking to go back. They want analog. They want an analog piano. They want analog effects, and we've given them just that. And so, while I have the preamp model up here today, the effects model that's coming out late summer will have an onboard compressor, delay, phaser, and chorus with dual concentric knobs that you can control, and it's just going to be out of sight.
Just to turn the clock back a little bit, and those who maybe don't know the musical instruments or electric pianos, I mean, the Rhodes piano is pretty much, it's created genres of music, if you really think about it. So if you had to just fly off 5 or 6 names of classic Rhodes players that people might know, who are the legendary Rhodes piano players? Oh,
legendary would be Herbie Hancock is up quite high. Chick Corea, who Herbie and Chick both played together on dual suitcase Rhodes with Miles Davis. Stevie Wonder is a popular one. Greg Fillinganes, who played Rhodes for Michael Jackson and for Stevie. Who else do I like? Oh, Ray Charles. It's one of my favorites. And you get Jeff Beck, Max Middleton, who played Rhodes on Jeff Beck's early records. I mean, the list is vast, but those are a few.
Yeah, so it's one of those where you watch any music festival or any live stream of a concert, and more than likely there's going to be a Rhodes there. So really,
well, what I tell people a lot of times who don't know what a Rhodes is, I say it's literally on every song that you've listened to, whether or not it's in the front or the back, it's there.
Even in trip hop. I mean, trip hop is a very Rhodes based genre. I mean, Portishead, Massive Attack, they've got Rhodes on pretty much every single song. So,
and while like I said, you have a lot of plugins out there now that when you might hear a record, you might not know the difference, and that's amazing. But when you're watching a live show, your eardrums and your bones know the difference. It just resonates with your body. So even if you don't know what it is, your body does.
Danny, so you've got a big team at Novation. There are certain things that are outsourced as well. So I think you work with mechanical designers, external like Axel and those sort of people. What's the ratio between doing things internally and then outsourcing them? I suppose sound design is done by a lot of external sound designers, but when it comes to the actual industrial design is the word I was looking for. Is that done in-house or is some of that outsourced as well?
It used to be outsourced, but as we've grown, we do it all in-house now, which is really exciting. We're moving with the times. We're getting things like 3D printers in the office, so we can like print out hot caps and see how they feel. So yeah, it's exciting to bring that in, and it's also nice to be, from my point of view, is to kind of work directly with a mechanical designer all the way through. So we're balancing off ideas between each other, how the feel of the thing kind of impacts the user experience as well, and being able to test that out with a mechanical designer. It's like you're talking about with the Rhodes. There's that you can have a plugin, but it doesn't feel right. Like it gives the player that experience, and that kind of experience then comes out as expression through the music.
Just another one for you, Danny. So you're a musician yourself. You create and produce electronic music. That's a benefit, right? As a head of product, to be able to, as a product designer, just to have a knowledge of how you would use things yourself. Is that sometimes a bad thing, where you make the product that Danny wants and not necessarily that the rest of the market would want?
Yeah, that is a line that I'm always towing. But the best thing is to, just remove yourself from the product and try not to be too invested as yourself as a musician, and trying to speak to as many people around you, as many musicians, getting that feedback. And sometimes it is the product that I want, but maybe it's the product that we all want.
So the question for you, Jamie, and welcome to some more people coming to listen to our wise words. The bar is open if you're thirsty, by the way. Anyone else thirsty? There's a bar. Not for the online people, sorry, just grab a drink from the fridge. So what is the transition point with your product developers at Rhodes, getting the feedback from these legendary players and the household players on it? Did you kind of do a bit of market research and say, money's no option, we want to build the ultimate Rhodes piano? Did you get the feedback from them, or did you kind of know what they were wanting?
That part of it, we basically decided ourselves. Like, money is no object, we must make the most superior Rhodes in history. Because the feedback that you do get from artists, and I continue to get from artists, especially all over London, is they keep renting vintage Rhodes. And we just happen to be in a time where these beautiful vintage Rhodes pianos are 50 and 60 years old. They just can't hold up anymore. You can keep teching them and keep repairing them, and that's what we do. And that's what a lot of these Rhodes techs all over the world have to do for all these wonderful artists and shows. But I think that time is ending. Everybody's ready for a Rhodes that is reliable. And this is, you can move it from A to B all over the world and nothing changes. The tuning doesn't change, the voicing doesn't change, the reliability and the construction doesn't change. It is a new Rhodes for today's artists.
Yeah, I think when Jamie and I picked the thing up to put it on stage, I've got the Rhodes Mark II at my place, and even with two people, that's like pretty heavy on the back. So when we picked this one up, it's like, that's a lot lighter than what I thought it would be. And there certainly is feedback that yourselves as players would give, but your artists is like, speak to the roadies, and can you just make it so that we can actually carry the thing, because they have to pick it up, put it on stage, put it in the case, put it on the tour bus.
The big artists don't care, they have roadies. But
it's the roadies.
It's the roadies. But those of us who gigged and toured with a suitcase or a stage, yeah, it's heavy and it's a drag to have to load it in your car and load it out of your car and carry it everywhere. So yeah, we've cut 30 pounds off of this piano, and it makes a difference.
Danny, what's been one of your most fun products that you've worked on? Because you've been with Novation for 7 years or something like that. What's been the most fun when the product's been released? You go, damn, that's a good one.
I think it's probably Peak, which is Peak was our big kind of flagship synthesizer. Novation was always a synth company in the 90s, And then we kind of moved into more controllers and things like launchpads. And Peak was us really turned into this kind of big 8-voice poly synth with lots of knobs on it that you can twist and have fun with. And I can remember being at Super Booth and releasing it there and just being just like a bit of like magic in the air that we kind of everyone was excited that we were back. We were excited that we released this product, and the whole team was like just really behind it and really kind of passionate. It didn't really feel like working on that.
Where did the idea come from for that product? Because as you said, in the 90s, Novation was very much a synth brand. And then in probably around 2006, 7, it started becoming more of a controller brand. I started doing controller keyboards and controller pads. How did that decision come to being to go, do you know what, let's make a few more synthesizers?
Yeah, I think it was when we brought back the base station, that was the kind of start of it. And also just how more and more people were just getting out of the box. So like in the 2000s, everyone kind of started moving to inside the box, using more plugins. That's why we started making more controllers, because people needed to control it, play it some way. But then as soon as people started kind of actually want physical things to turn and record, we was like, yeah, we can get behind this and that. So yeah, started with the base station. It's like every got customer feedback, which is just like, oh yeah, I really like this, but what do you mean like a poly version? And that was the kind of like, little bit of feedback that means saying, yeah, what if we did do the poly? And that's what eventually turned into Peak.
So there was that trend, like you said, probably early 2000s, people in the box that had a laptop, that had the music software, and perhaps they graduated, they learned on the laptop using virtual instruments, and then they graduated to getting their first little bit of analog or digital external hardware. But there's probably quite a big audience as well for Rhodes that have, they've started using the virtual instruments, and now they've got maybe a bit of disposable income, or they take in their hobby fairly seriously. They want to play a few shows. They've started that route and then worked their way up to the Rhodes because of the history and the price point. I suppose it is really a slightly older target market, but you're going to get a lot of people out there who will aspire to have this product.
Well, yeah, if nothing else, I think even if you maybe don't have the money to purchase one outright, you would go to a studio that has one, because you want that tone on your record. And that's what it boils down to, is tone. I learned that in 2003, and when I realized just how important tone really was, and how that feels. And when I got my first Rhodes, there's something about the way that it interacts, you interact with it, and it interacts with you. It's just incredibly inspiring. And so I wrote my first album when I got a Rhodes, and I think that's what drives people to keep coming back to it, because they feel inspired by it, and the feel and the tone just becomes so important.
When was Peak released? Which year was that? About 5 years ago?
Yeah, about 5 years ago. It's 2017, I think.
So with the older original analog hardware, it's like, if you bought it, it's exactly the same for the next 50 years. But with modern technology, with chips, with processors that are in there, you can do firmware updates. I seem to remember that Peak has had a few updates. One of them was a pretty big one as well. I suppose the possibilities in a way are kind of endless. You can always create more sounds and add a few more firmware updates. How important is that to a company like Novation to keep on updating the product? Circuit was a very good example of that.
Yeah, it's really important to us because it keeps things fresh, which means we can keep kind of selling the same product. We don't have to make new hardware, which is pretty good from like an environmental side of things, because it's not just about the material you make, it's the material for like the tooling in the factories that has to be made. So getting longer lifespan out of products is really good for the environment, and it's also great for users because all our updates are free. So Peak has just had an update. It was last month, and so we gave our users a pretty huge update, getting new effects, new things that they can do with the oscillators, new modulation paths. And yeah, it just kind of, it makes your device that you bought 5 years ago feel brand new. It's exciting to dive back in again.
Nice. Going to be heading to the floor shortly. If any of you have any questions that you want to ask, the question I want to ask, which you don't need to answer quite yet, is how can I get one of those T-shirts? Tell us a little bit about the Rhodes Mark 8 then. What are, in a nutshell, what are some of the features that hasn't been in the original? What are some of the things that make it completely awesome, and why should I buy one?
Right. In a nutshell, it's the best Rhodes ever built. Yeah, to expand upon that, all of the materials are locally sourced in the UK. And that's nice. You're not outsourcing from all over the world. You're using the highest quality and caliber of metal and wood and engineering that we could get our hands on. So, like I said before, we've decided to spare no expense, hence the high price. But if you were to build it cheaper, it would break. So we're not doing that. We're not going to make any of those mistakes. We're just doing the most top quality instrument we could possibly build. In addition to that, the key bed is one of the only pieces not made in the UK. It's made in Germany by a company called Kluger, who builds the same key bed for your Steinway concert grand pianos. So it is essentially the Steinway of electric pianos, to put it mildly.
There's been a lot of talk about the key bed because the Rhodes kind of, I mean, traditionally it's got that clunky kind of feel to it, and it just became like the standard. People got used to it.
Well, you get different ones with the Rhodes is such a, they're all hand built, so they're all unique, and so you might get one that just isn't great, or you might get one that just plays like a dream. But ideally, the market, all of them will play like a dream.
Yeah, I think clunky is very much a compliment. It just had that kind of feel to it, and you knew that we were playing the Rhodes. So you've been going around showing it to various artists. The key bed, of course, I mean, that's the connection between your hands and the instrument. Has there been a bit of adjustment that people go, well, that doesn't feel like a Rhodes, and then after a few minutes they just get into it?
No, it's been an instant love affair. I mean, not, again, to put it mildly, whenever I put this piano in front of a Grammy winning artist or whatever artist, they're just like, whoa, this is it. This is the Rhodes that I didn't know it was going to be this good, because they've played the clunkers, or they've rented one for their show, and it just, it needs repairs, it needs a tech, it needs this and that. A grommet has gone bad, a spring has gone bad, something's gone bad. And with a Rhodes, it's such an intricate instrument that even the slightest millimeter off affects the playability of the piano. And just to answer your question before, as far as why this one, I think I mentioned earlier that we have the preamp model, which is a preamp that is so far and beyond any of the Mark 1s, 2s, and 5s from the past. Alone the preamp can do things that we've never been sonically capable of. And then we have the effects version coming out in the summer, which again has the 4 effects that every Rhodes player desires. So it's just it's just taking it to an entirely new level while keeping the sound that we all know and love.
What are some of the happy surprises that have happened at Novation? Does it happen that you just kind of soldering a circuit board and something goes wrong and you're like, wait a minute, that actually works? Does things like that, like ever happy accidents happen? Or is it always disaster when something goes wrong?
I'd like to say that they're a bit more well thought out, but no, the happy accidents definitely do happen. It's normally just sparking an idea and just being like, speaking to a developer, and then later on they've done some code or they've messed about with the circuit and come back and go, yeah, give this a try and see how it goes. So what happened, like on the latest peak update, it's got a delay built in, and we want the delay to go longer. And it's a digital delay, which is like, what happens if you drop the sample rate? Dropping the sample rate is going to make the buffer twice as long, so the delay is going to be longer, but it's going to be less quality. And we just kept upping it to just keep dropping and dropping and dropping. And things go really weird when you drop sample rate too far. So as you turn the delay time back and forth really quickly, you get all these pitch shifts, but the pitch shifts are actually musicals. So it's jumping up in fifths and octaves and all this kind of stuff. So now you can just hit a big chord, wiggle this tone knob, and you get all this amazing like harmony coming out of your chord. So that we didn't intend that to happen, but it happens.
Anything like that at Rhodes? I suppose Rhodes is such a traditional instrument that you just got to get it right. You don't really have room for maneuver to experiment.
No, just the opposite. Many happy accidents with Mark 8 that have just blown our minds. We're like, whoa, I can't believe it can do this. And as our electronic engineers are building the effects module, they send over sound patches being like, check this out. Didn't know it was going to do this, and then we've also had mechanical happy accidents where we keep experimenting with, say, the heat treatment of the dampers, make it more snappy. Because that can be a problem in many of the vintage units is saggy dampers, and the notes ring, but then they shouldn't. We snap right back. So yeah, the magnetization of the pickups. Apparently, they've just made some discoveries in the last month that have changed the tonality and made it better. And same with some mechanical engineering that we've done on each key, which again, things keep happening that we're like, wow, it's going to be even better than we thought.
So Jamie, you mentioned locally sourced components, and Danny, you talked about environmentally conscious products. How, for a company like Novation, how do you go about doing that? It's not only the packaging. You would see a lot of products out there on shelves have got just brown cardboard packaging, and they're not using colored ink on them nowadays. How do you do that from packaging, but all the way down to the product itself? More and more companies are becoming more environmentally conscious, and how does that work in Novation?
Yeah, so we really kind of taking baby steps at the moment and trying to work our way up. But the first step was just to calculate how much carbon we're generating and how much carbon is being generated throughout this product's lifetime. And for us, a lot of the carbon is generated from production and shipping. So working out how we can reduce packaging, make things lighter, but still be protected. So when you get your product, it's not broken. Using recycled packaging where we can. We just switched to using recycled cardboard and having a plain cardboard box with only a single kind of print on. We used to have color printing, and that's just more and more processing, more and more energy that's being used when it's not that many people care about the box these days. It's not like a lot of people buying online, you're not seeing it in the music shop. As well as that, we are constantly doing research as well. So we're looking at how can we use, is it possible to use ocean plastics for our controller range? Like our budget controllers, can we get plastics on the ocean, recycle it, and turn it into a controller? Can we use recycled metal where we can?
Right. Same for Rhodes. I mean, the locally sourced, I suppose that is because you want to go for the absolute highest quality.
Right.
There's probably an environmental perspective on that as well, where you're not getting everything from flown in, shipped from abroad.
Exactly. We're not using any Chinese metal or anything like that, which is which could be advantageous cost-wise, but in this situation, the supply chain has been so difficult that it's been much easier to source things locally and just a higher quality. Also, after I think a year of researching companies all over the world, sourcing locally not only was better for the piano, but revived some jobs in North London for metal workers and carpenters who otherwise weren't doing a whole lot, and now they've got this incredible new project to work on, and they're just doing their most beautiful work.
Have we got any questions from the floor at this moment? Please proceed.
Is the effects unit for the Rhodes going to be standalone?
I'm sorry, could you repeat it, please?
The effects unit for the Rhodes, is it standalone or built into the new version?
We'll have the preamp model and then the effects model, but it'll be built into the piano. Yeah, so you'll have what you see up there, the preamp on one side and the effects modules built into the other side.
So can you retrofit, if you bought an early one, can you retrofit it with the effects?
That is the plan, yes. So for people who bought the preamp model and would like to retrofit it, they would purchase a package that would have a new front panel to install.
but that wouldn't be compatible with a Rhodes from 1979.
No, it wouldn't be compatible with that. However, all of the other parts we are building here. And so if somebody with an old Rhodes needs new dampers, new springs, new grommets, whatever, they'll be able to get that from Rhodes directly in, soon.
The Rhodes is up here, so after this, you're all more than welcome to come up and have a little play. Tia will be up here playing us some classical traditional songs as well on the road, so all looking very much forward to that. Thank you, Tia. Let's talk about controller keyboards, Danny. We haven't really mentioned those. Novation is not only a company that makes very pretty synthesizers. Controller keyboards has been a huge market over the last 15 years, right?
Yeah, it has. Probably our biggest success is Launchkey, which is MIDI keyboard designed for Ableton Live, so you can have it hook it up to live, it integrates straight away. All the functions are there. You can control your mixer, palette, and everything. But you can also do things like clip launches. So you can do some really fun things like doing live performances where you're looping yourself playing, building up an arrangement as you go.
How has that market changed over the years?
I think it's just really about connection. So we put a MIDI port on our latest launch key because people want to be controlling synths and they want to be controlling more hardware as well as the software as well. So you need to kind of be kind of catering for both like people who just want hardware musicians and also people who want to hook up to a door. But it also means that we put a lot more kind of creative tools into the hardware as well. So the latest launch key, we've developed chord modes, so you can choose a scale and then the pads turn into wild voice chords. So if you're kind of beginning in music, you can at least get some chords going if you don't know how to play keyboards yet. And then as you kind of go up, as you get more advanced, it's like more like advanced things like arpeggiators built in, and also use a chord mode so you can program your own chords up and play them out.
So cheating, basically.
Yeah. If it writes a good song,
you can play. I say that because that's what I do. You can play a chord with one finger. It just makes it so much easier, right?
Yeah, it makes jazz a lot easier. You can just play it with one finger and shred with your own.
And then you gravitate towards a Rhodes when you actually learn the chords.
You can't do that on a Rhodes.
Not yet. Maybe in a future update. Any other questions, Greg? I'm sure you've got a few questions there. Okay. So it's very exciting times at Rhodes. Let's talk about, just out of curiosity, production, lead times, costs, availability, etc.
Right. It's challenging. Building this piano is not easy and it's not inexpensive. It requires a lot of manpower, a lot of parts. As you all know, the supply chain is difficult right now. And we are constantly doing research and development to improve the piano and make it the best ever. So we are still looking at production units of the preamp model to be able to ship by the end of May is the current target point. And then production models of the effects model, I would speculate September. Yeah. Because there's also a lot of red tape that you have to cross as far as FCC regulations. Every country has a different regulation that you have to pass. There's tests that need to be done for each one. And again, there's just a lot of changes, a lot of challenges to bring an electric piano back into the market. But I think we'll be in full production swing by the end of the summer.
It's pretty exciting. We'll definitely get at least one at Tileyard in the studios.
Oh, you're gonna need more than that.
We're gonna need more than that, but we've already got Jack from the TYX studios definitely down for one. So if you could, if you could make them, then we'll take some.
We're committed to making 500 this year. So they're all hand built. So that's the number we're shooting for, because that's about as much as we can do.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Danny, I saw you nodding your head profusely when Jamie was talking about regulations and things. Is this something that when you joined Novation as a product guy that you were aware of? And when you are thinking about a product and how it's going to be made and what the features are, is that something you just have to have in the back of your mind? Because us as customers, if we go out and buy a television or a microwave or whatever it might be, we just buy it and think that's it. But there is a lot of red tape. So how does it affect you as a product designer?
Luckily, it doesn't affect me too much. We have a production engineering team who look after production, but they do have to go for that certification, and particularly, yeah, it takes a long time as well. So making, there's always you have to get the product in a certain state so it can be tested correctly and making sure, and like at that point, it's like you're not making many more changes, or else you're gonna have to go through that process again. But yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare, thankfully, to deal with it.
How long does it generally take? So if you take a product like, well, let's say the Launchkey Mark III and a product like Summit. So from an initial idea of sitting in the meeting room saying, we're gonna make a new synth, how long does it take? And generally, like in a simplified way, what are the steps?
Yeah, it depends on the complexity of the product, but I'd probably say about 1 to 2 years from the initial product conception. And yeah, the steps are we normally do a few, like 3 to 6 months worth of design work. So a lot of user research, all that testing, building prototypes, trying to get as much confidence in the product as we can. And then it gets handed over to engineering to go build it. And what we do is we go through lots and lots of samples. So we get all these engineering samples in, and every time they get a little bit better, and a little bit better, and a little bit better. And so we know that they're happy. And at that point, we also probably have some like software, firmware element that people are working on alongside the hardware. That all has to be integrated, and that's when we kind of give it out to artists, reviewers, get people to get their first look on it, and then yeah, production normally takes about like a month, 2 months, and there's like some kind of element that they need to be shipped around the world and get to all the places. So when we announce, hopefully they'll be available soon after.
I suppose you get a lot of ideas, just going back to the topic of artists. I know that, well, both your companies work very closely with artists, you know, if they're the biggest, most famous names out there or the bedroom producers. How often do they come up with an idea? You go, why didn't we think of that? Does that happen?
Yeah, we had one from Apex Twin. So he had this idea that every time you press a key on the base station, it should play a different patch. It was something that he was kind of doing in the studio already. He's got this circle-on sequencer, and he was just sending these program change messages to the base station. So every step is playing a different sound. And he just came to us and was like, why can't I just do this straight on the device? Why don't I kind of program it from there? So yeah, a lot of interaction with Richard, and just being like, how do you want it to work? How do you see it working? And yeah, we've made something pretty crazy that you can turn your base station into a drum machine and make all these weird and crazy noises with it.
And you released the limited edition Aphex Black version of that, didn't you?
Yeah, so we did the firmware first, and then we asked, like, do you want to make a special edition? And we'd already done a special edition before, which is the Warp one. It had a nice purple bottom, same colour as the Warp logo. And then, Aphex was behind it, and we've got like little nods of little Aphex logos throughout. And yeah, some really cool artwork as well, designed by Beautiful, who's his official collaborator.
Not sure if you can give away too much insider info. What can we expect from Rhodes? So firstly, you're going to get these beasts out the door, but then you were talking earlier about the accessories, things like the flight cases and really everything from beginning to end of that journey from when someone buys the product. What are the other peripherals that you need to look at?
Well, I'd say, because of it being such a traditional instrument, what most people are looking for is a reliable Rhodes that has the tone that they're looking for. And they always seem to be surprised by how much else it can do. So in terms of like, say, artists giving us feedback, they don't normally say, oh, I wish it did this. They normally are like, oh my God, I can't believe we can do this. Peripherally, we are, still in R&D mode for the flight case, for the stand, and some other ideas that I can't reveal for 2022.
customized colors, right?
Well, the colors, you can go customize your own roads right now, on our website, and I encourage you to do so. You can have any color of front panel you want, any color of lid that you want, your lid will match the pedal. You can, let's see, you can have either the standard Tolex bottom, or you can have this gorgeous walnut shell that we build for the bottom as well, which is really beautiful. You can have black legs on the stand, you can have silver legs on the stand. And you can have the preamp unit, or you can have the effects unit. So again, please go to rhodesmusic.com and customize your own and take a couple pictures of it. It'll do it all there for you.
Nice. Very good website, by the way. It's very nice to see the way it's been put together, and it looks good and it's easy to use as well.
Oh yeah, I've designed mine on there, and I'm somewhere around 12 or 13,000 pounds.
Okay, just gonna add the little LED lights around the top.
Right, yeah.
Change colour.
There's
If you do that, I'm definitely gonna.
Well, I'm not saying anything right now.
Danny, I know that you work very closely with the commercial and sales department as well, because you're gonna have to get the feedback if the product is working or the product isn't, especially with the current line, but then also upcoming things. Is that a responsibility that falls on your shoulders or some other members of the product team? And how does that work? I mean, if you make a product you think is the best product in the world and it's not doing that well, or if something's doing exceptionally well, you'd like to know about that, right?
Yeah, so we're always just in contact with pretty much like everyone in our business and try and get as much insight as possible, but particularly with the sales team. They have the benefit of being out there every day on the road as well, particularly now they're really getting back on the road again. And speaking to customers and also the people kind of like reselling our products in shops as well, and getting all that feedback, and that kind of we have regular meetings with them. And also not just thinking about the UK, but we also have it worldwide as well. So we have an office in LA. We've also got one in Australia now. So it's trying to get different kind of world perspectives as well, because what might be doing really well in Europe may not be hitting up in the US.
With those 7 years that you've been there, what are some of the trends that you've seen? And I don't know if you can narrow them down as well to the last couple of years. You mentioned getting away from the computer, going doorless. Is that still a thing, or people gravitating back towards the laptop? What are some of the interesting trends that you've spotted?
Yeah, doorless has probably been the biggest one. Just people moving away from the computer. Eurorack really took off. People getting into modular synths. Now we're kind of seeing a thing that people, particularly in like COVID, people got really excited about their hobbies. So they bought loads of stuff. And now they're really trying to focus on workflow. People are trying to figure out what works for them. Because they've got like a room full of synths, but they still can't make any music. They're not succeeding in trying finishing that track or finishing that album. So I think the next thing is like how people kind of consolidate that down and picking the kind of right bits of gear for them, whether it is just like having a nice special instrument that they just focus on, or having a new way of interacting between the computer and the hardware world. It's figuring those bits out, which is going to be the interesting next step.
I was just thinking about ease of use, and I know that with innovation, that's always one of the things, is you want to make the ultimate product, but it needs to be easy to use. That's not just for the beginner, but for the professional, because people are excited when they get a piece of music gear. They're not going to spend half a day reading the manual and then opening the box and getting it. So maybe starting with you, Jamie, is ease of use something that's considered, especially because you do have a whole bunch of knobs there. Is from that aspect, it's just making sure that you can actually see the lettering live on stage in a dark environment, or is there another level where you just want to switch it on and play essentially?
Right. I mean, it's a bit of a plug and play situation because it being a piano, so you approach it that way. But I would say that I haven't had any issues or any feedback as far as anybody being unable to see what's in front of them. What has been nice is to see everybody's different approach to it and how they attack it, differently than I would. which is just so interesting to see, like, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about doing it that way. And so that, you know, it's been really neat to see how everybody comes in and then approaches the market and the effects and what they can do. And the other thing that's been sort of amazing, at least for me personally, is a Rhodes piano is a very personal instrument, in my opinion. And so it took me 7 days or so to create a relationship with that particular one, because it was in my studio. You know, you all of a sudden you just start to understand it in an organic and an intrinsic way. And that is cool. That makes it really cool, because, you know, it becomes yours. And when you buy your Rhodes piano, it is yours, and it's a relationship that you're going to develop that, you know, no one else will.
Danny, I have a question for you. COVID. A lot of people were stuck at home. They weren't spending money at the pub. They weren't going to the cinema. They weren't going on holidays. They weren't going to the restaurants. And I'm sure there are many people in this room as well who thought, I'm going to finally get some music here, and I'm going to write that EP, and I'm going to do that album. I know with many music companies, if it's from the big guys to the small guys, if it's hardware or software, sales pretty much went through the roof. Now it's at a stage of, it's a little bit on the fence. People are starting to lose interest. Maybe it's going to be put in, you know, in the attic or the basement. Is there anything that your company and you see from others to keep people inspired to say, do you know what, you can, is this through tutorial videos? Is it through interviews? What's the process? You sold a lot, now you need to make sure that people are using the damn equipment.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is focusing on tutorials, and we did a lot with Novation. We did a lot with like getting people started, so getting people up and running nice and quickly so you can get to making music. What we want to start helping people now is how do you kind of finish music? Because we're always kind of like, here you go, off you go make music. But yeah, having some guidance. So yeah, looking at how we can have tutorials, even if it's just like small 1 minute snippets that you can easily digest as you scroll through Instagram or something. Just like, here's a cool sound that might inspire you. This is how you make it. So recently for Beat Group, just doing it like 1 minute synth recipes. It's like, this is how you make this type of sound. And if that makes that person kind of go back, if they make that sound and it inspires them to get to the next step, yeah, that's how we're going to try and gently encourage users. But really, yeah, you have to kind of do it yourself. You have to go through that more.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. Just wondering if anyone's got some questions. We've had some students here from Tileyard Education as well, who are users of equipment. They write music, they write songs, they produce. Has anyone got questions for Danny from Novation about any Novation products? Or it's a question from the back. Hi.
You quickly mentioned Eurorack. Is there any integration with Eurorack models in any Novation synths or MIDI keyboards or MIDI older ones?
Yeah, great question. So we do an SL13, which we added CV and gate onto. So it's like it's our flagship MIDI controller, and it's got a sequencer in there, and you can send those sequences out to the Eurorack. And also on Beacon Summit, we've got CV input, so you can take sources from the Eurorack and add more modulation into that world. As well as that, we also have things like our circuit groove boxes. We always used to send out MIDI clock, but recently we added analog clock, so you can be driving either if it is Eurorack or even something like an old Goldman, as if that's got a clock in, so you can just get sequences perfectly in time without that kind of MIDI jitter.
Yeah, so Eurorack is still a thing. I mean, we all know the nickname for it, Euro crack, because once you start it, you're just completely addicted. So it's a real rabbit hole. Any other questions? Anything else? Mark, Tom? No? Okay, so we're actually just right on time. So if you got any last words each, before we end the live stream, thank you to everyone that's joined on that side. We had quite a few people there. We'd like to invite everyone just to come up and speak to the team here, have a little go on the Rhodes piano. It's quite a rare occurrence that we've seen, quite an exclusive occurrence actually, that we've got such a beautiful new instrument up here. So make the most of it, take pictures, put it on Instagram, show it to your friends, because it's going to be a few months before they might get to see one themselves in real life. It's not too far away. So yeah, if you'd just like to summarize life at Rhodes and anything else you can add to the topic of how we make it.
I'll just say, we all know here, Rhodes is a historic legacy that, has stood the test of time, even in the advent of synthesizers and the advent of controllers and MIDI and everything that we have now. It still is something that is desired. And lo and behold, Rhodes is back. And it's the best one that's ever been built. And it's right here in the UK. So I couldn't be more proud of where we're going and what we've got.
Nice. Danny, any closing words from people in the audience who might be thinking of a career in product? What do they need to be aware of? And what are little tips that you could give them should they decide to become a Danny Mark II?
Yeah, I just say start making stuff and start prototyping stuff and start tinkering and messing about. Before, as a product designer, I was in QA and I was just really annoying the product designers all the time. Actually, like showing off little prototypes that I built on my computer and like various software. So yeah, just try and make stuff and show it to people, get feedback, and you never know, you might have like hit onto the next big thing.
Cool. Very wise words. So thank you to everyone who's been on the live stream. We're going to end the live stream now. To find out more and to listen to the Rhodes in action, please go to the Rhodes website, which is rhodesmusic.com. There's some pretty snazzy videos there of people playing and getting to hear how it sounds. Everyone here, if you want to come up, we're going to try convince Jamie to play us a little tune or two.